Okay. This is preparing and setting up here. I think we should be ready to go live in just a sec. And here we go. Wow, what a fun week in sports it's been. It's crazy to see the NBA playoffs rising to a crescendo here. The Stanley Cup playoffs are in the Final Four. I saw over the weekend Wrigley Field and a lot of other venues across America have opened up to full capacity, 100% attendance, and a few more will do so in the days and weeks to come. And that got us thinking the Hoosier Sound has yet to provide its official stance on what the best arenas and environments in the Big Ten are for men's basketball and for football. And that's what we will do right here on episode 203 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports and the Big Ten to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. You're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, where I am your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my fellow Hoosier Sound co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, we've yet to sort of jump on this ever since the inception of our podcast. How excited are you to do this tonight? And I'm sure you've got a trick or two up your sleeve here about some overrated Big Ten venues in this footprint.
Yeah, I'm saving most of mine for football, but there will be one in men's basketball that will probably, shock some people. So we'll see.
Ooh, man, I can't wait to hear it. We're going to start with men's basketball. And look, the Big Ten, we're lucky to cover it here at Indiana HQ. There's so much tradition and so much culture here in the conference. But Matt, to me, I'll let you give your worst Big Ten venue in a second. We're going to go worst to best. For me, the worst is Penn State. It's a stadium that's just way too big for a fan base that's way too little, even for their big games when they've had good teams. Just a couple years ago, they had guys like Lamar Stevens sort of lead a pretty good Penn State squad. When you've got top 10, top 20 matchups, it's just weak. It's just weak, even for the big time, blue ribbon events. I mean, do you think there's another venue that falls into this, another environment, or are you going with Penn State?
I mean, you could say Northwestern, but Northwestern isn't as big a venue as Penn State's is. And also, it's just sad that Penn State as a school can't get their basketball program together. I mean, you look at the state of Pennsylvania, you look at the state of Philadelphia, right? Villanova, St. John's historically, the rest of the group of four that's in Pennsylvania.
St. John's is up in New York City. St. Joe's, yeah.
St. Joe's.
You think
St.
about
Joseph's,
right? Even Pitt, when they're good, they have really great crowds there too, up in the ACC now. Yeah. But Penn State's just never been able to get there.
No, it's crazy because Pennsylvania is a really big basketball state. I mean, you see the love the Sixers are getting right now for how good they are. It's just weird that the state school, the crowning jewel of Pennsylvania's collegiate system, is just not doing it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Matt. So I'm happy we agreed that Penn State's worst. You gave a mention of Northwestern there. Are they your 13th rated school?
No, they're not. Wisconsin is my 13th rated school. And I was going to put them last because of my hatred for Wisconsin basketball fans, but I'm going to put them 13th because still, even with how bad they are not worse than Penn State. No, seriously, if we're doing this list, Wisconsin is like in a top 5-6 venue. But every interaction I've had with the Wisconsin basketball fans in person has been awful. Their arena just seems like an NBA arena. It's got a weird atmosphere whenever I watch it. It seems like more of a wine and cheese crowd than anything. So that's why I have Wisconsin down here. And plus, we just never win there. And so it just they just piss me off. So Wisconsin's at 13.
That's interesting because
I had lucky number, by the way, too. I'm just
absolutely
bad voodoo on them.
Yeah, Kohl Center, man, already shots fired here. We're like 5 minutes into this. I have Wisconsin pretty far down as well, but for me, the second worst Big Ten venue, and you've got to understand when we do this, we're considering venue and atmosphere, not so much the win-loss record, Not so much the performance on the court or the recruiting off the court, nothing like that. Just venue and atmosphere. And even though Wells Shrine Arena was renovated in 2018, to me, Northwestern still has a second worst spot. I've attended games there, and even the new arena, when it comes through on TV, when you hear the comments about it across the Big Ten, Northwestern's, Welsh Ryan, Evanston's just a lousy basketball area. It's just none of it works. None of it is up to the standard of a Big Ten school. It's a puny sized arena to boot. It's incredibly small. I think I've seen the stat that's been thrown out there that, there are a lot of Big Ten, Indiana high school basketball venues larger than Welsh Ryan, whose capacity is something like 7,600.
Yeah.
So to me, even when Northwestern's good, Welsh Shrine Arena and Evanston, not great. So to me, they're 13th. Now, I've got Ohio State as my third worst basketball crowd. They're my third worst basketball atmosphere because a lot of the things you said about Wisconsin resonated with me about Valley City Arena in Columbus. Again, the teams are usually really good, whether it was through Thad Matta or Chris Holtman or whatever. The teams are great, which means they've had a lot of high-profile matchups in that place in Columbus. But I've been to games there when Ohio State's a top 5 team in the country. Well, you can even go back to the Jared Sullinger, Deshaun Thomas days, all the way up through to the players who are on the team right now. It's a horrible basketball crowd. It is just it feels like the air is out of the balloon from the pregame. And you go, wow, I've been to Assembly Hall or Mackey Arena or Breslin Center, and it's just so much different. It's the complete disparity. And it's sad because the Buckeyes have been a really good basketball team for quite some time.
Yep.
So they're my third worst. Matt, how about you? Who's your third worst basketball crowd in the Big Ten?
My third worst has to be what you just talked about in Northwestern.
Okay. Yep.
I just, that arena and that program is just not great. And I know they updated and it's brand new, but still, they're not a basketball crowd. And Chicago is a basketball city and will always be a basketball city, but Northwestern just doesn't have it. So I would hope in the future that maybe after a couple good years they get a little bit of like some juice in that arena because it is nice looking, but they don't show up. So if you don't show up, you don't get picked. This is a sentiment that I have for where you'll see in my football rankings. If you don't show up, you don't get picked.
Okay. All right. A little teaser there. Just a quick hint for those of you that may not be fully up to date yet with your IU basketball news. When the Big Ten opponents were released for this upcoming season back in mid-May, all the schools we mentioned so far, Penn State, Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Ohio State are all venues where Indiana will travel to this upcoming basketball season. So if you have the spare time and if you've got the funds to take a trip and got the time, it may not hurt to cheer on the Hoosiers there in a few venues where, let's be real, the crowds just aren't as good. All right, Matt. For me, the fourth worst crowd, the fourth worst environment in the Big Ten, that's where I slotted Wisconsin in. So a lot of the stuff we talked about, the Kohl Center in Madison, I went there.
Madison as a town is great. I love Madison. Thing. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the basketball crowd, even when the teams are good, just doesn't match the standard held by so many other Big Ten teams. Football crowds amazing. I went to the Kohl Center back in the winter of this past basketball season, and I was like, oh, there's no one here. It almost sounds like it's a normal Wisconsin basketball game as far as the crowd noise. Who's your fourth worst basketball environment in the Big Ten?
Well, I think we're following each other a little bit, but Ohio State.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I have Wisconsin a bit lower. Now we've had the same four, just a little slight different order. Yep. But I same sentiment. Like, if you don't show up, you don't get picked. And they've had good teams, and they just don't show up. No. They only show up if it's an IU game or a Michigan game.
Not even then. I'll be honest. Yeah. Even those games. I remember last year, Ohio State and Michigan were facing each other in top 5 matchups, and I know fans weren't allowed to Big Ten basketball games last season, but when you even think about previous years, they've had so many high-profile matchups, and it just hasn't been there. So
Yep.
just to recap quickly, my bottom four in order of worst to fourth worst: Penn State, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. Matt tweaked the order a little bit. His rankings so far have gone 14th Penn State, 13 Wisconsin, 12 Northwestern, 11 Ohio State. Matt, I'm curious where, if at all, we'll sort of, differ and sort of have different thoughts here. What is your 10th ranked Big Ten basketball venue?
Nebraska.
Oh, nice.
And
Okay.
I think is a fairly simple discussion of their program hasn't been good enough. I like their fans. Nebraska fans are fun to be around, even though they're a bit cuckoo. And I like their arena when I see shots of it on the inside. I know it's a good basketball, and I believe they use it for volleyball as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that gets used a lot for volleyball because they're really good at volleyball, and Nebraska fans go crazy for women's volleyball there. But it's just for the basketball team hasn't been good enough. But when they show up, they're fun. But they just don't show up. That's why they're down this list a little bit further than I think they should be.
I've got Nebraska a little bit higher, and I'll tell the listeners when I get there in a moment here. But it's a place where, it is in the middle of nowhere, and there is very little basketball culture. It is the newest building in the Big Ten when you think about just newly constructed arenas. Pinnacle Bank Arena opened in 2013. So, I know some of you students might be starting your undergrad or graduate journeys at IU in a couple months. Something to think about here. Perhaps a road trip to Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln, Nebraska is in your future. For me, my 10th place atmosphere is Michigan. And the University of Ann Arbor, Chrysler Center just has not had the real punch, impactful crowds that you thought you would get for a team that, again, they were number one seed in this past year's NCAA tournament. We saw the heavyweight matchups between Tom Crean's Indiana teams and John Beilein's Michigan teams in the early to mid part of the 2010s. They've really elevated as a basketball program. It's not any longer just kind of a Fab Five school, right? Over the last 10, 15 years, they've really developed into a high-profile Big Ten basketball team. But as we've said, for some of the other successful basketball programs that have been at the bottom of the list, the crowds just haven't been there. The students are all spread out. They're not really close to the floor a lot of times, and that, I think, has contributed largely to it. So for me, Michigan's 10th. For Matt, Nebraska's 10th. Matt, who's your 9th place Big Ten basketball environment?
Michigan, the wine and cheese crowd of Michigan. They seem a lot like I've been to a UNC game before. And again, wine and cheese crowd is just a lot of like soft claps, yay, school fight song. It's not a fun atmosphere.
No.
Like IU is, like a bunch of the other teams on this list we'll talk about, and like the other stadium, the other state school in their own state, Michigan State, does it much better than Michigan does. I'm sure our friend Ant will probably strongly disagree with us. But I'm afraid that Michigan is what I feel like IU is going to be in football if we continue to have success. And that is, we are successful, but they're a fan base that doesn't really know what to do with success, and doesn't really know how. They're not a basketball crowd, basically, is what I'm saying. They're more of a football school. And I hope that Juwan Howard will change that, because Michigan as a school probably deserves to have a little bit better of a crowd than they currently have.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the thoughts there along my lines too. So let's keep it rolling. Your 9th place team was Michigan. Who's 8th and still in the bottom half of the Big Ten? Who's your 8th place Big Ten venue?
Iowa.
Ooh, okay.
Their arena to me is like really outdated. I visited it once in Iowa City. It's just I really didn't like the vibes of it, but their fans go nuts. So while the venue isn't great and kind of looks like every other like bowl looking Big Ten arena, right?
Carver Hawkeye, yeah.
Yeah. I really like their fans. I think they bring a really good atmosphere to a game. They get behind a team. They show up. So they would be further up the list if the arena was maybe a little bit better. But I think eighth is appropriate.
Yeah, I've got Iowa ninth on my list. And again, it's very similar. I think they have really improved over the last few years in all seriousness. And I think that's a place where in 5-10 years, you could see them continue to climb up the list. You can already give them credit for being above Wisconsin and above Ohio State. In eighth place, I've got Minnesota. And here's the thing. I've heard a lot of great things about Williams Arena and how historic it is. And that's honestly why Minnesota's eighth and not 11th or 12th. Okay, I mean, this is a place where, honestly, they're famous for, I guess, wearing like farm animal costumes to their game. I mean, what are we doing? Are we really gonna put these guys on the same level as Maryland or Michigan State or Purdue or Indiana? Absolutely not. Okay, I mean, I guess part of the problem is Minnesota really hasn't been relevant as far as men's basketball is concerned. I mean, they fired their coach just this past offseason. They really haven't had too many top 25 teams or serious NCAA tournament contenders. But like I said, we're not really including performance into this. As far as the history of the place, Williams Arena does get a little credit. But other than that, I just don't see much of a basketball passion and following in Minneapolis. So like you may have noticed, I haven't mentioned Nebraska yet. But anyway, we've gone from 14 to 8. Just to recap a little bit, Matt's 9th place environment was Michigan. His 8th spot was Iowa. My 9th spot was Iowa. My 8th spot was Minnesota. Matt, as you get into the top half of the Big Ten, who's your 7th place atmosphere?
Rutgers, the high school arena. I think they have a fantastic fan base. I think that place gets louder than it probably should get. But again, it is still a Indiana high school gym. So if they had a bigger, a little bit nicer arena, I think I'd give it to them. But they're a very basketball knowledgeable crowd, thanks to growing up loving the Knicks, and they know how to root for a loser. So that's cool. So go Rutgers.
The old rack, yeah. I've got Rutgers a little bit higher up actually. My 7th spot is Nebraska, so a school you've already covered. But I think Nebraska is a place where even for a program that's had no success in men's basketball besides, the occasional first round NCAA tournament trip, and it's not even that frequent. They're a crowd that really does, even if their team's competitive, the people who are there really do seem to get behind their team. And one thing I've noticed in the last couple of years, maybe it is an after effect of having Fred Hoiberg as their head coach. It does seem like more often than not, a lot of the seats in that building are filled. And of course, a newer arena, I think a nice new flavor for them in Lincoln. So that's what I've got there. Matt, my 6th place venue was Rutgers. So I was kind of thinking along your lines right there. Obviously, the RAC has improved a lot as far as the environment the last few years. Piscataway, New Jersey has been kind of a fun basketball place to tune into, and they're playing on BTN or FS1 recently. So I've got Rutgers sneaking up to that 6th spot. Who's your 6th place Big Ten environment? Oop. All right. I think we're good. Oh, testing. Matt Lukens, can you hear me? Yeah, technical difficulties happen on our end sometimes. It's all good. Man, I was just getting into the heat of the excitement of the rankings and things like that. Let's see. We got we're just going to let this run here for a little bit. Everyone bear with us for a moment. Let's see, Matt. Looks like you're on. Hello. There you are. Oh, we're good.
It put me in minimized video, and so I couldn't see that I was muted, and I'm like sitting here talking. Okay.
No worries. I love it. So just to summarize real quick, I had I had just talked about Nebraska as my 7th spot, Rutgers as my 6th. As you get into your number 6 Big Ten environment, who are you looking at here?
The Illini.
Yeah.
And for the same reason I put Michigan, except they actually show up a little bit more than Michigan does, and there's still a bit of a wine and cheese crowd. I think from 4 on up on my list, they are great, fantastic, perfect basketball venues. But
I agree.
You could really interchange anybody on my list from 5 to 10.
Yeah.
And I would probably agree with you, just because all of these are very meh basketball venues. The only time I've ever seen Illinois have a crowd where I'm like, gee, I wish I was at that game, was when they knocked off the 2013 Indiana team. That is the only time they had an atmosphere where I was like, wow, I'm really envious of them being in that situation and at that game. Other than that, like every time I watch an Illinois game, I'm like, sleeper. But they show up and they're there and they have some good teams. And I've been to Illinois for a football game. They have some really cool traditions. It's just, it ain't all there. And so to me, that's why they're 6. They would be higher if they actually like were fun, but they're not.
Yeah, and that's probably a place where this past basketball season, the old State Farm Center would have been hopping more because of how good Illinois was, but of course they didn't have that chance. I've got Illinois 5th, Matt, so we're right there on the same page. I agreed with your point loud and clearly when you were saying sort of the top 4 have separated themselves. Am I right in saying your 5th place squad is Minnesota?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. When you think about it, we've kind of gotten to this point where the top 4 have pretty much made themselves clear. 5 to 14 are all, I mean, maybe there's a bottom tier to say the least. I would probably put Northwestern and Penn State in the clear-cut bottom tier. And there's kind of a big muddling in the middle. And then you got your top 4. Matt, let's go. Who's your number 4 Big Ten environment?
Michigan State.
Nice.
Michigan State. I think the students carry Michigan State's basketball arena intensity. I've been to a Michigan State game. I was at their Midnight Madness as well. And so the students, the ring around the close to the floor is great. The rest of the crowd is meh. So to me, Michigan State is 4th, even though they are like 3 times better than Minnesota, in my opinion.
Yeah, Breslin's a place that gets a lot of credit, and sometimes I look at it and I don't know why. Obviously, Breslin's got a history to it, and Michigan State's been a prominent basketball arena for a long time. The crowd is very good, and that's why I've got it 3rd. My 4th place team is Maryland, and Maryland's a school that has really made itself loud and clear and sort of plop down right here in the Big Ten and for the last decade or so, and made it known that, hey, Xfinity Center, College Park, great place to go watch a basketball game. The students are incredible at the University of Maryland, if you ask me. I think Maryland's students to me are right up there as far as the best in the conference, as far as how engaged and excited they are. I can't blame the alumni or the former players. I mean, they grew up in the world of the ACC and the Maryland Terrapins, and now they got to get used to this Big Ten stuff. I've got Maryland 4th, Michigan State 3rd. Matt, you got Michigan State 4th. Who's your 3rd place?
Maryland. Maryland is 3rd. Okay. I think there's a clear top 2. I think you all know who is left because we're keeping track.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, you said the Maryland student section is great. I think they're better than Purdue's student section, who's at number 2 for me. I just think Maryland's crowd is a little bit, like you said, a little bit more wine and cheesy than maybe Purdue's alumni, who are, to me, Purdue's the 2nd team.
Yeah.
All of Purdue's fans are fat, insert bleed. They're crazy.
Excrement, yes.
Right.
Feces, yeah.
Right, but if I take myself out of my Indiana glasses and I put myself in a neutral fan perspective, Purdue games are fun. They're really cool.
They are.
and they're just fun.
Even the cupcakes.
Yeah, they're fun. They're really good games, and so that's why for me Purdue is second. If they were a bit more consistent as a school, maybe had a better 5 championships or something. I don't know. Maybe they'd be first, but I'm just kidding. So no, I really like Purdue. I think Mackey's great. My girlfriend goes to Purdue, so I can't really say too much bad about them.
Bias,
she goes
bias.
Hey, grad school into the best audiology program in the region, so I can't blame her. She went to IU. She's a Hoosier fan.
Okay, all right. So
let's not attack her on the podcast.
All right, no worries. Maybe next week. Okay. Look, I've got Purdue second as well. The atmosphere is just flat out amazing. Honestly, the only thing that separates Mackey from Assembly Hall is just the overall history of the arena. And I think anyone with even a slight drop of Big Ten basketball fandom will agree that Assembly Hall is just a flat out much better place to watch a college basketball game than Mackey Arena. And that's what to me separates it from 1 and 2, because, man, I've been to West Lafayette to cover Purdue basketball games and to watch them in person, and wow, I mean, that venue is just amazing. The fan base is incredible. The fans are crazy. I think the older they get, the crazier they get. That's one thing that I picked up here recently. They're incredibly smart too, very well informed about the game, educated about the game. They know all the little intricacies, as the game's going on, the travels versus the not travels, the blocks versus the charges. The
basketball in Indiana is just different, Nithin. We can just end it there, right?
It really is.
Just the fans know way more than anywhere else in the Big Ten, and it's not even close.
Yeah, and that leads us to our top spot, which is Assembly Hall in Bloomington at Indiana University. And look, as far as I'm concerned, when you combine the atmosphere with the aura of the building, Assembly Hall is number 1. And I know people around the Big Ten will have Assembly Hall probably in the top 2 no matter what. I hear a lot of pull for Breslin and East Lansing from fans who are outside of the Indiana footprint. And there are some folks who do shout out Mackey Arena in the state of Indiana. But overall, I do think the top spot should go and will go, for me at least, to Assembly Hall in Bloomington. Matt, obviously, based on process of elimination, you agree as well.
Yep. I mean, Assembly Hall is the best. IU's fans are the best. We're the best. Yeah. You can't tell me otherwise. This is the only love that IU.
Yeah, I heard the marching band's pretty good too, man.
Yeah. This is the only love that that IU is going to get from me tonight. Just wait for the football list.
Oh, boy. That's I'm already concerned about that. We got some feedback from our Indiana HQ and the Hoosier Sound crew as well, just getting some external opinions. It's really interesting. We got a comment from Rob that Rutgers is underrated as a basketball arena, and I think more and more people are getting to notice that as Rutgers becomes better. It's small, but as Rob has said, and he's gone to the rec to cover Indiana Rutgers games. It's small, but it gets packed, and it's pretty loud as well. And these are the kind of things we're seeing. I like the overall Noah earlier, we were talking, he made a great point. Penn State is easily the worst at basketball, but he also says that Michigan State rivals Indiana, and as much of a non-biased opinion he can have, MSU's right up there. Indiana, he points out, he just needs to redo Assembly Hall a little bit to get more consistently the top seats, and this is a good point. Once you get really high up, I mean, it really does feel like you're watching it from 30,000 feet up in the air. So, there's that. Also, he gives a shout out to Maryland, who's better than people think. So that's kind of where we stand. Matt, any final thoughts as far as the men's basketball ratings are concerned?
No, not really. I mean, other than obviously Indiana is the superior state when it comes to basketball. That's pretty obvious. And that Wisconsin fans suck.
Yeah, and Penn State's clearly last. How about this? Just to wrap up here, as far as the men's basketball segment is concerned, Indiana will not travel to Illinois, Michigan, or Rutgers next year. So keep that in mind. Take our rankings, take that information and combine them. Do with it what you will. The Hoosiers will travel to every other Big Ten basketball venue this upcoming season for the men's side. They will not face Iowa, Michigan State, or Northwestern at Assembly Hall, but they will take trips to those places. So that brings us to our fun segment every week of Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And wow, with the Tokyo Olympics coming up, how about the Indiana Hoosiers, who have punched their ticket through the diving event to qualify for the 2020 Olympic Games? And again, side note, it's ridiculous that we're calling it 2020 for both the Olympic Games and the Euro 2020 competition. I looked it up as to why they do it, so I don't have like an uneducated opinion, and it's all really silly. It's basically like, oh, we just got to keep it the way we got to keep it, and I'm like, why? I mean, it makes no sense. Let's just keep it going. We all care. We're all way more excited about 2021 anyway. So I really would have liked the Olympic Games, the IOC, or the UEFA committee to just make it 21. But that's besides the point. I'm stealing Andrew Capobianco's thunder and the diving program's thunder, because Capobianco, who's a reigning NCAA champion, he, as well as former Olympian Mike Hickson, ran away with the automatic bid in the 3-meter synchronized springboard title. How about incoming freshman Carson Tyler, who also had a good performance to conclude his Olympic trial event? Hoosier All-American Jessica Parado made it as well, so she deserves a ton of credit. It's great to see these Hoosiers make the Olympic Games. The swimming team will get a few as well into the Olympic Games potentially, so keep an eye out for those names as they come out over the course of the next week. You can follow Indiana's swimming and diving program at Indiana Swim Dive on Twitter. Also, a friendly reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts, so Apple, Spotify, you name it. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review. That's important. Tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. So, Matt, let's switch gears here and talk football. All right, look, Indiana's becoming more of a difference maker in the football realm of things. We're seeing the Hoosiers routinely put up over 500 records and getting into bowl games. Just last week, Noah and I broke down a bunch of different football numbers and predictions for this upcoming season. So make sure all of you go listen to episode 202 of the Hoosier Sound, which is perfectly still valid and works to listen to on your drive to and from work or from school or wherever. But if you look at the Big Ten football venues, and again, we're taking performance out of it, just the aura of the stadium, as well as the atmosphere during the games. With football season less than 3 months away, Matt, who is the worst Big Ten venue in this Midwestern footprint?
No surprises, Rutgers. Zero surprises, Rutgers. I have some horror stories from my friends that took a trip to Rutgers as a member of the band.
Any like what? Anything?
Kids throwing out F-bombs and flicking them off like 12-year-olds and getting bottles thrown at them, and it's Rutgers football. It's Rutgers versus Indiana. It's not a top 5 matchup. This is not Miami FSU. Like this is IU Rutgers, and like it had like my friends told me they had a Pee-wee football coach egging on his 12-year-old kids to flip off the IU band. So these are the kinds of people we're talking about that go to Rutgers football games, and the people that go there are small in number. And the stadium itself just looks awful and like a copy, carbon fiber copy of every other college football arena ever. If you just took how you do like the face swaps and then the face meets in the middle. You take 2 faces and then they combine into one. That's Rutgers football stadium for all college football stadiums. It's just very generic and very meh. And Piscataway is awful. So Rutgers is last. I didn't say anything nice about it because there's literally nothing nice about it.
It really isn't. I mean, it's true. Shout out to I learned it was named SHI Stadium. That was something I didn't know until today. Maybe I should have. Maybe that's common knowledge in the Big Ten world. But I don't know who exactly SHI is and what company it is, but some might argue all they're missing to name that stadium is the letter T. So anyway, This is a venue that surprisingly is only the third smallest in the Big Ten. I thought it was going to be dead last, but it's not. And we'll tell you who's last in a moment here. But I completely agree that the worst football venue and the football atmosphere in the Big Ten is Rutgers. I do remember a couple of nice games they've had, a home game against Penn State, a home game against Michigan. But still, as usual, it seems like anyone who travels to Rutgers has a bigger presence at Rutgers than Rutgers fans. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I do remember last year's game, which, of course, in the pandemic times was only attended by families and special guests. It felt like the crowd was a little bit more animated than usual because, of course, mom and dad and brother and sister are going to be rooting on, their friends, and they're probably located somewhat close to the on-field mics. So I thought that was kind of funny. My second to last Big Ten venue is Northwestern. Look, Ryan Field isn't as bad as Rutgers, but when you consider that this is the place that has the smallest capacity in the Big Ten, and even in big games, the visiting team always outdraws them in Evanston. They're my second to last team. So consistency there for Northwestern. Congratulations to their athletic department. Second to last in both men's basketball and football. They have a new athletic director there, so maybe he can do something about that. Matt, who's your second worst Big Ten football environment?
IU is my second worst. And this is from an unbiased view.
Yeah, clearly.
And a little bit of a grudge, I would think, against IU football fans. Don't get me wrong, we have some great football fans among us, but most of the student body and most of the graduate body and most of the alumni body are more tailgating fans than they are IU football fans, which is fine. Tailgating is fine, but you got to go to the game too. That's part of being there on a Saturday in the fall as going to a game. That's what I grew up around in the SEC. That's fine. You can go ham at the tailgate. You can go ham, but you got to show up too. You got to dress up nice and go, whether it's at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium in Gainesville or it's in Tallahassee. That's the culture that I grew up around, and at IU, I just don't see that. I also hate people that leave in the middle of the game, and IU fans are notorious for leaving at halftime. You don't get a prize for showing up for half the game. Like, that's not cool. I get it if we're down 63-0 at halftime, but I've seen it done when we're down 14 to Michigan at halftime in a ranked game, or down 10 to Penn State at halftime. And people just give up and leave. And I get the football team in the past has had success, but that's not great fan behavior. And that's not how you show a football team your support. You wouldn't leave at halftime during a basketball game. Why are you leaving at halftime during a football game? Also, I personally don't like Memorial Stadium. I don't. I think IU could have a much better arena. I like the additions they've added on to Memorial Stadium. I think both end zones look fantastic. I think the middle part looks terrible. The upper deck of the home sideline, the walls are falling off. You can see there's cracks. The facilities are bad. And so for that is why I have IU as second last. It's just a decrepit old stadium with fans that leave at halftime. This is a challenge for IU fans. You can go up the list, stay, because when you do stay, it's a fantastic environment. I remember the Ohio State game a couple years ago. That was a lot of fun. But it's not fun when you leave. It's not fun when you're not there. It's not fun when you don't share in the misery sometimes. You got to share in the misery, and you guys cop out. So for me, that's why IU second.
No, understandable. I mean, along those lines, right? Like, I've been a Cubs fan ever since I was little. And the Cubs have had a very difficult record of success ever since really their inception. But really up until 2015, fans still stuck around and they still rooted for the team. And some of my favorite childhood memories at Wrigley Field are when the Cubs are down 10-2, but you're all still hanging through it, and 38,000 of your closest friends are still believing And
Yeah.
even if they can put a couple guys in scoring position or load the bases with one out late in the game, say, hey, if you get a hold of one, it's a close game. You never know what can happen. But that doesn't happen at Memorial Stadium. Now, I will say one thing, okay, to defend the Hoosier faithful, who are probably listening to this and wanting
I would
to
hope they're
scream
listening to
into
this.
the void. Even if a lot of what you said was true about Indiana, I don't think they're close to being worse than some of the other schools that I have down here. For example, Northwestern, I put them second to worst. Even Indiana in their worst days, Memorial Stadium is so much nicer than Ryan Field, and Hoosier football fans are so much more engaged Northwestern football fans. So that's why I have Northwestern second to last. I think there are even a couple more schools that are worse than Indiana. And for me, the 12th rated Big Ten football atmosphere is Maryland. And, that falls along the same lines. It's a crappy football stadium up there in College Park and, for in Maryland Stadium. And then, of course, the fans don't care as much as I gave the students credit at Maryland for showing up to their basketball games and creating a major home field advantage. They do not have that, and they do not have that, and I don't think they will have that in football. It's a program that has seemed to become very disconnected from their football team. Frankly, even when they were in the ACC, they didn't do all that much that caught notice nationally as far as the fan base and the environment and the juice in the arena. So I've got Maryland 12th. How about you? Who's your third worst Big Ten football venue?
Maryland. I have Maryland 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only reason I rank them above IU is that they show they don't care. They don't fake it, right? There's some
interesting.
There's some
fakers. So I counted that against Maryland. You're saying, hold on.
Yeah, so fast. I choose honesty over being fake, and there's a lot of fakeness about the IU football fandom. There's a lot of I'll show up for the first half and things are going bad. 65 is gonna be bad on the way back. Trying to get up to Indiana. 36 is gonna be bad.
Yeah.
You guys want to go? Okay, we'll go now. It's fine. There's I paid for a full ticket and went to half the football.
It's really
funny.
They
just don't pay for the football ticket. I appreciate that. That's fine. That's more tickets for opposing fans, right? There are people who actually want to go to the game.
That's a funny point. I never thought about that, right? Yeah, it's just empty from the start. It doesn't start full.
Yeah, that's fine. If you're gonna be like that, you're gonna be third worst. You're gonna be third worst, but you're gonna be above teams that leave halfway through.
Wow, that's rough. I'm gonna still give Indiana fans credit for making it in the first place, showing up, and then
honestly, there's a little bit credit for our fan base's drinking ability that they can go through all that drinking at the tailgate and still somehow make it to the game. The Maryland fans don't even make it. They're like, I'm too hungover at this point. I'm too drunk. I can't.
So you go Rutgers worst, Indiana second worst, Maryland third worst. How about coming in 11th? Who's your 11th place Big Ten venue?
Northwestern.
All right. So we talked.
The only reason why Northwestern is out this far is that I have seen them have an atmosphere before where I'm like, that looks like fun. And that happens to be every time they ever play Ohio State there. It looks like fun. It is carried by Ohio State fans, to be honest. But
it's all red. It's all red, scarlet and gray.
Not always. I do remember. It might have been like 2009. I don't remember. But I remember there was a night blackout game for Northwestern where there was more Northwestern fans there than Ohio State fans. And that I applaud them for. It looked like ridiculous. Fun. It was a classic game I remember watching. And therefore, that one game gets them above the other three teams.
Putting Northwestern 11th is the biggest disgrace in this entire episode as far as football is concerned. Because the smallest venue, and they have no excuse. Their team's been good. Pat Fitzgerald went into their school, and he was a All-American linebacker. They have everything going for them. And it's a road game every game.
Like I said, I appreciate that they're not fake. If they don't want to watch football, they don't want to watch football. They live in Chicago. There's so many other things to do on a Saturday.
Evanston's not Chicago. That's
okay, but the alumni live in Chicago. The alumni do.
So interesting.
Smart people that go to Northwestern live to. And to be honest, I think their stadium is adorable. I think
It's
Ryan
a
Field.
joke.
It might be a joke to you, but I think it's adorable. I remember playing on it as IU in NCAA football. I enjoyed it in that game. I enjoy looking at it on the television now.
See. Oh
so
my gosh. It's got okay. I can't argue with NCAA football getting a piece of this ranking. Whatever. All right, I've got Indiana in the 10 spot. A lot of the things you said, but again, I'm going to give Hoosier fans credit. I know there are a lot of devout, ardent fans that have followed this team when they've struggled, and that's more than I can say about places like Maryland or Northwestern. Oh, by the way, I did skip one. I have Illinois in my 11th spot. It's a place that's by far the most overrated football venue in the Big Ten. People have talked about Illinois for years. Oh, they made the Rose Bowl and they did this, and Champagne's great and all that. No, I mean, it's every time I watch an Illinois home football game, it looks absolutely miserable. So for me, my rankings so far, Rutgers are worst, Northwestern's 13th, Maryland 12, Illinois 11, Indiana 10, and I've got Purdue one spot higher at 9. Ross-Ade's a place where they've had enough juice in their fan base, enough passion in their fan base, where for me, even though Purdue is one spot below Indiana in basketball, they're one spot higher than Indiana in football, because for a lot of the same reason, Ross-Ade Stadium to me has a lot more history, a lot more success, and a lot more highlights, whether it's YouTube or ESPN or whatever, that take place in that arena compared to what's happened at Indiana. So to me, Purdue's 9th. Matt, how about you? Your 9th place, your 9th place Big Ten football venue.
Well, first off, we're in the middle of the podcast, but shout out Lily King, who just won the 100-meter breaststroke, so she'll be going to Tokyo.
Well, there you go, just as we were talking about him. Wonderful. No surprise there, I'm sure.
She won it with a team of
Oops, we may have a little bit of a technical issue once again. Man, you think you could trust the internet? My gosh. Let's just hang tight. Hopefully, we can get this cleaned up here before we upload the audio to the various podcast platforms. Let's see here. Looks like Matt's done a quick little reset, and I think we should be back. Wonderful.
I hate Xfinity.
Shout out. And Xfinity, I mean, that's Maryland's people. I mean, geez, we got to drop them, I think, further in the rankings.
They might be 14th now at this point if that's their people.
Anyway, so your rankings right now, you got Rutgers worst, Indiana, Maryland, Northwestern. Who's above the Wildcats for you? Who are your 10th and your 9th rated Big Ten football venues?
Illinois is 10th, aka hell on earth. I don't like Illinois at all, but I do like their stadium. I think it's got some nice nostalgia factor to it. That's the only reason why they're at 10. It says a lot about the schools below them that hell on earth is at 10 out of 14. And then I have Purdue 9th, same as you.
Yep.
I think Ross-Ade, every time I've ever gone, is a absolute stink hole. But their fans create a really nice atmosphere, and they do know their football at Purdue, so I'll give them that. So 9th is about as high as I could put them, and they only slightly beat out hell on earth. So.
Sure, understandable. For me, I'm just going to give my next couple. I've got Minnesota 8th and Michigan State 7th. I'm curious to hear what Matt will say, but I think the top 6 have sort of separated themselves from everyone else. To me, TCF Bank Stadium has had some really good atmospheres for big games, and it's really come through. It has looked like sort of a blue chip, big time football program in their big games. Some of the non-conference matchups, it is what it is, and I get it. But obviously, it's a football fanatic state, football fanatic city. Gophers have had a lot of big-time games they've played, especially recently with guys like Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson and whatnot. I like Minnesota 8th. And to me, Michigan State 7th. Spartan Stadium, great building. A lot of big moments have happened there. They're just kind of a factor here as far as some of the other programs in the Big Ten just carrying so much more weight. So to me, Michigan State comes in 7th. How about you, Matt? 8 and 7 on your list.
I have Michigan State 8th.
Okay. We'll flip. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like East Lansing a lot. I like their
Sure.
stadium a lot. I don't think there's anything wrong with the from here on out. I think all these are fantastic football venues.
Right.
And it's just like they're just last out of all of them. And then my most, I guess, controversial opinion.
Here we go. What do you got?
That Michigan is 7th.
Damn.
I think they're the lamest football crowd. Like,
wow.
Absolutely. There's a lot of them, which is great. But every time I watch them, I go, that's a professional football game. And
right. Okay.
It's supposed to be a college environment, and it's a professional game. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Michigan, as a state, doesn't have a professional team. So that's okay. I mean, they have the Lions. They're so forgettable. Let's not forget about the Lions.
I was into that joke. I mean, I was plugged in.
I know. That was a joke. Yeah, the Lions are so bad that they decided that the Michigan is going to be their professional football team.
Exactly.
Which is great. Congratulations to them. But I think they're extremely overrated. I think that there's a lot of them, so it makes up for the fact that they're lame. So Michigan at 7.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I have Michigan a lot higher because I do count the history and the tradition of the place quite a bit. Michigan Stadium's got a lot of that over the course of the last 100 years or whatever, but I kind of like it. Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't think of it as far as the best atmospheres and sort of the student sections. It doesn't really come through, especially recently. I like where your head is at. Keep hitting me, Matt. So you talked about Michigan State and Michigan, 8 and 7. Keep going. Who are your next couple? 6th and 5th.
All right, let's do 6th and 5th. I got 6 is TCF Bank. I really love that stadium.
Yeah.
That environment is great.
Oh, I think we're back. I think that was on my end there. Okay.
Was it? No, it was mine because I went down to 1 bar. I don't know what is happening right now.
All right, here, let's hit it again. So you were talking TCF Bank in 6th. What was the reasoning behind that?
They show up despite it being the temperature of Antarctica. And for that, I applaud them. And being an open air stadium in Minnesota is tough. And I've seen games where it's like negative 12 degrees outside and windy, and that stadium is packed. Mostly because they're all trying to get body warmth off each other. But still, credit is due where credit is due, and they have a great environment. 5th for me is the Wave, and that's Iowa. Sure. I think they have a fantastic environment at Iowa. I love the Wave. I think that's really bumped them from. I probably would have them below Michigan State if that wasn't a thing, to above Michigan State. Also, I remember watching their upset of Ohio State a couple of years ago. That environment looked nuts.
Absolutely incredible.
They can go crazy with the best of them, and I have a brotherly love thing with the Hawkeyes. I don't know. They're like my second favorite Big Ten program. So for me, Iowa's at 5th.
Yeah, I've got them 6th, but honestly, it's just a happening of just all the other programs being where they're at. I've got Iowa 6th. Indiana's going to get a good taste of what the season opener is going to be like coming up here very soon in about 2.5 months. So very excited to see what Kinnick Stadium will have in store for the Hoosiers. For me, the Wisconsin Badgers come in 5th. And again, it's highly competitive at the top here.
Yeah.
I just can't remember as many incredible Sports Center leading moments at Camp Randall compared to what I've seen at Michigan Stadium. Granted, Appalachian State didn't go into Madison and win, back in 2007. But between jump around, Bucky the Badger and that fan base, it was clear before the pandemic that they made a pretty big difference to the Wisconsin Badgers at home. And I think it's even more clear now afterwards how much Wisconsin really needed their home fans last year. So to me, they're a top 5 Big Ten venue, environment. They come in 5th. So, Matt, let's keep it going. How about this? Hit me. 4-1. Let's go.
Okay, 4-1.
Yeah.
Nebraska at 4. Fantastic crowd. They show up even when their team sucks. Something IU should probably figure out how to do.
I have Nebraska 4th as well. We're on the same page. Keep it rolling.
Yeah, I Wisconsin 3. Camp Randall is fantastic. I love jump around. I think they're the craziest, stupidest fan base. I hate Wisconsin. They're 3rd. 2nd is Penn State for me. I get all the hype about Penn State, but to me, most of the hype about Penn State is about their whiteout night, and they only do that once a year. There are 5 other home games that Penn State has, and while they are great, they are nowhere near the level of the whiteout day. And then number 1 for me is Ohio State. By far the best stadium in the Big Ten. By far. I think they have the most classic-looking stadium in the Big Ten. I love the Horseshoe. Their fans are nuts. They're the most knowledgeable football fan base I've been around in college football outside of Alabama. They are fantastic when it comes to knowing when to get loud, how to get loud, what to do, how to get under the skin of not only the opposing fans, but the opposing team as well. Such a hard atmosphere, such a hard place to play. So that is why Ohio State is number 1.
Before I give all of you my top 4, I would like to slide in our social media shout out right here. And the person I want to tip my cap to this week is Kyle Schwarber, the former Indiana baseball star. Absolutely lit up the majors this past weekend, both against San Francisco and against the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's had 4 home runs since our last podcast episode. And by the way, our last recording was on Wednesday night, so we had a short week. He had an incredible last few games. Even tonight, he's tacked on another 1 for 4 with the run scored. So 4 home runs in the last 5 games for Kyle, and he's up to 13 home runs on season, and he's trying to lead a Nationals team here to a playoff spot. But of course, we're barely halfway through the baseball season. We're not even halfway through the baseball season yet, so it'll definitely be interesting to keep an eye out to see how that goes. I love the college baseball action that's going on, whether it was the regionals a couple of weekends ago, or the super regionals that just concluded yesterday, which was Monday. Former Indiana baseball manager Chris Lemonis led his Mississippi State team to the College World Series for the 2nd consecutive season. Of course, in 2020, there was no College World Series there, but Lemonis has done a great job since making that transition from Bloomington to Starkville, and they're probably the team I'm going to be rooting for here in the College World Series, which starts on Saturday. But of course, for us, you can follow our social media wherever, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We are Indiana HQ everywhere except for Instagram, where Matt, we are
Indiana.HQ.
That's right. You can find us at Indiana.HQ over on Instagram. So for me, my top 4 go in this order. My Nebraska comes in 4th. And then I go Michigan 3rd, Ohio State 2nd, Penn State 1st. And again, to me, my reasoning for having Michigan up there is, they still do get 100,000 every game, and their high-profile matchups are definitely a sight to behold. But just so much history and tradition at Michigan Stadium. Memorial Stadium in Nebraska, it is the best Memorial Stadium in the conference out of the 3. So I do have to tip my cap to them for that reason. Great crowd. Obviously, when Indiana went there and won in the 2019 season, it was by far one of the biggest crowds Indiana has won in ever, and by far the biggest crowd they'd won in the last 25 years or so. So, it was great to see the Hoosiers come away with the W there to clinch bowl eligibility, if I remember. I did get a comment from Rob earlier that he said, man, football at Nebraska is just incredible. It's just amazing. And I could see why he would say that. To me, Ohio State comes in 2nd, and Penn State gets the 1st place vote. I understand that the whiteout happens once a year, but the whiteout is amazing. I mean, to see that come through, for those big games, Penn State has just bring it on on a weekly basis, and that elevates them so much. To me, the difference between Penn State and Ohio State is the whiteout, because Ohio State doesn't do one. And, both stadiums get 100,000 people every Saturday. And, it just kind of depends on the year that the team's having, as far as, which year, you hear the crowd getting louder. So definitely let us know your thoughts over on social media, on Twitter and Facebook. We're going to post our rankings for sure and see what you guys think. But Matt, as we wind down, what are your closing thoughts tonight? We ranked the Big Ten football venues, the men's basketball rankings too. I had a lot of fun. What are your thoughts?
IU football fans could learn a little something about IU basketball fans, and that's about showing up and showing out for your school even when you're not doing too hot.
Well, and the thing is,
I remember
IU football fans are IU basketball fans, but you look at some of these other programs like Nebraska basketball, for example. Yeah. They still have a pretty good showing, even when their team's not that great.
Yeah. And so I think there's something to learn there. It's a little bit fair weather, and I really don't appreciate that, especially for the program that's getting better. I'm gonna get a lot of hate, I'm sure, by people like, 13th? What? Facilities need updating. I think the fan base needs to show a little bit more loyalty. If you do that, you move up to 10th. All right, you move up best hell on earth. But
I think Indiana can quickly get up to 7th in this conference. I really do. The top 6 or 7 to me have just so much pedigree; it'll be hard. But I think Indiana can get up to 7.
If they make it up to 7, for me, they're past Michigan, and I don't see that happening. I also don't see them getting past Michigan State quite yet, especially since I like Michigan State Stadium. Like their stadium's really nice. It's generic looking. It's like Rutgers. It's like the same thing. It's the bowl with the 2 sides up top, but there's not a bad view in the house. And you can't say the same about a lot of the other football venues and some of the basketball venues. So, I do quite enjoy going to IU games, though. So if you're there this fall, you should look out for me, because I'll be at the games. I'm sure Nithin will be as well. So if you guys ever want to meet us in person, that's probably the best place to do that. But yeah.
And that's, to me, how I'm going to wind down tonight. I mean, was the entire purpose of us having this episode this week. It's because you tune into whatever sporting event you want to tune into over the course of the last few days and weeks, and you're finally seeing full stadiums and arenas again, and it's incredible to watch. And like I said, over the next few weeks, it looks like, as long as things keep trending in the right direction, pretty much all the buildings in the country will be able to have full capacity, and that is really exciting, especially with an Indiana football and men's basketball season that should be one to watch, to say the least. But that about wraps it up for our 203rd show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You are all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.